My name is Deanne Correa, and I am from the YALI Network office in Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us for the third part of a three-part series focused on entrepreneurs. Now, these sessions are presented by the Office of the U.S. Speaker Program in partnership with the U.S. Embassy in Burundi. In fact, this series is a really good example about how partnering with others can lead to great opportunities. The YALI Network would like to thank them for all this for happening, and to our presenter for today, Ben Heller. Welcome. Before we get things started, this webinar is presented on two platforms. So some of you are joining us on Zoom and some of you are joining us on Facebook. If you're joining us on Zoom, there will be an opportunity to submit your questions through the Q&A for those of you who may not have already through your invite. On Facebook, just feel free to enter your questions as comments on the page that you are viewing this presentation. Now, our presenter will answer a few questions live at the end of the session, and he will do our best to respond to those comments. So thank you for joining us today. Let's get started. And with that, I will pass it on to Mission Bujumbura for their greetings and introduction of today's speaker, Mr. Heller.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Greetings from U.S. Embassy Bujumbura. I'm Jean Dodien Nkurunziza, and I'm the one who is going to introduce the speaker of today, Ben Heller. Ben Heller is an artificial intelligence AI expert who is currently the Field Chief Technology Officer at Microsoft. Prior to this, he was the Generative AI Transformation Manager at Google Cloud AI Services, collaborating with leading global companies to design and implement AI and generative AI solutions that enhance enterprise operations and services. His areas of expertise include AI adoption in business development, digital transformation, and enhancing organizational capabilities and client values through AI. So with that, please help me to welcome our speaker, Ben Heller. Ben Heller, over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Nice to virtually meet everybody. Let me begin by sharing my screen. Okay. So we should be good now. Yes, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. If you're watching this afterwards, thank you for spending the time with us today. The purpose of my presentation today is exactly as you read it, right? Today is how do we explain how AI isn't replacing you, but what it's replacing is the gap between you and your potential. I get asked this question all the time on, is AI going to take my job? What jobs are the least likely to be taken by AI? How can I become better at my current job with AI? And so I want to share with you today more of a personal example, which can be replicated in any sort of use case, and which means that you can replicate this in your world of business. You can replicate it as you're starting a company, as you're an entry-level employee or an executive leader at a business, or just for your personal, as you're a student, a young professional trying to figure out where to make it in your career. This is my view on how to maximize your career with AI. A little bit more about myself, just so you kind of have a deeper introduction. So this is Ben Heller speaking. These opinions are my own. I'm not here on behalf of any of the companies that I've worked for in the past. My history goes back from in the sales aspect. So I used to sell technology. Then I moved into the consulting and the delivery space, specifically in generative AI. So I helped deliver projects for Google's top 100 global customers in what we called custom complex AI projects. So we were kind of on the bleeding edge on seeing what can Gen AI do or not do, and how can we maximize the value that we're getting from it in production across all industries. We worked in media, entertainment, healthcare, regulated industries, financial services. So it's been a great experience. And now moving into Microsoft, I'm seeing similar use cases, but two different technology stacks and two different operating models on how people can choose to solve things, maybe solve the same use cases, but with different tools or different ways, because there's not the perfect way here. It's just what's the best way for you at that time. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you. We'll kick off into going into my next slide, which is the reality check. So reality here is that the jobs aren't changing at the moment in light speed the way we're expecting it. I'll refer you to how people felt when, let's use Microsoft Excel came out, right? The example I'll share with you is before Microsoft Excel, if you were a financial analyst, the way that you would analyze companies' job performances, right? You would have to take their 10Ks, take their investor presentations, take their revenue, incomes, balance sheets, manually track them on most likely a sheet of paper and put it in a calculator. Maybe you're typing that into something of a computer, but it's not doing any of the math for you, right? You're having to do all that manually. And so if you think about how that person's job looked, it was what they felt was the best way to do that job today. Then Excel came out, and you had all of these mathematical tools with formatting and tables. You can automatically get the information and kind of do macros from these 10Ks and almost have it like you don't need to redo all the formulas. You can just plug in the next quarter of data and automatically provide you the analysis because everything's mapped in for you. Now, when you look at those two use cases, you see the person that's doing it in the best way they thought it was, and then the person that's doing the same job but using the new tool that's available for you, and in this example, Excel. At that time, we weren't thinking that we lost our jobs. We weren't thinking that technology is ruining everything. We've realized that the person that was doing the same thing with Excel could maybe do 5, 10, 50x the job productivity of the person doing the calculations by hand every time, right? So the argument here is that the reality is that nothing's changing with the way that we're using technology. It's the same conversation we've been having. It's just generative AI has made this very accessible to every industry and every use case. It wasn't just the financial analyst. It's now impacting everybody. So now we're asking these questions. So what can AI do for you today? You can make it and adapt it to your current job to get very different outcomes and accelerate your momentum of doing the jobs that you're doing today. So if we take this back and look at our career equation, or my career equation, how I view this is in order to elevate your career trajectory, it takes a combination of how are you as a judge, what's your rate of learning, and then how visible are you making yourself to your counterparts, to the public, to your executive sponsors. And with this combo, this is what will elevate or escalates or accelerates your career. And so all of this is happening today, but AI is this multiplier that allows you to accelerate these three factors that I called out. And so when we go through this, you'll see kind of this is the formula that I'm using for a personal use case, but it will be transferable, right, to any business use case, to any executive use case, to any product management or company use case, because it's all the same foundational things we're talking about here across all of this. So where does AI help, right? It helps you think faster. It allows you to be able to accelerate that judgment decision-making. You could frame problems better. You can get insights quicker because you have access to so much more data. Now, with that access to data, you can learn deeper, and you can learn that deepness faster. So rather than taking a full course and a master's program, you can take one class and do that in a day because that's very specific and usable to just this specific thing that you need to learn today. So rather than the typical way of learning is you do this long learning cycle and some of it will apply to your current job and some of it won't. You're now able to learn deeper in smaller cycles, in faster iterations to get to your clarity quicker on just the thing that you need that will help you move that needle to the next stage. And then lastly, ROI, right? Return on investment, nothing really means that much unless you could show the value that you're providing. And if as you move into those executive roles, as you move into that next career step, the way that you show your work and be the biggest advocate for yourself and have other advocates for you is going to be the best way that you can move up in this career ladder. So AI actually helps you show your work better. It takes these thoughts, these ideas into more shareable artifacts like well-formatted documents, video demos, discoverable type of things that you can share on LinkedIn, for example, or Facebook. And you could also ask for feedback. So you can create that iterative learning cycle and get feedback from people to say, would you make this better? And then you're using your network, your community to get better while showing your work and establishing yourself as this expert. So let's go into this judgment advantage, right? So why is thinking faster helping you judge? So when you get or you want to propose a problem or a solution to your current leadership, right? Or to your current product owners, or fill in the blank of the user. You usually need to take time to synthesize what is the problem, what's the impact of that problem, what's the total addressable market if we solve this problem. If you watch the TV show Shark Tank, right, you'll see Shark Tank always comes out and they always kind of joke around this percentage of a percentage, right? So if you haven't seen it, it's basically this show where people pitch their startups or companies to these sharks. They're like billionaire investors. And they'll say, this is why you want to invest in me. It's because if we can solve this, this is $1 billion industry. And how I got to the $1 billion industry is because this is a percentage of the $1 trillion industry. So if we just get 1% of the $1 trillion industry, we can have $1 billion addressable market. So if you take all of that research, you're able to do that significantly faster within like a deep research type of chatbot or a deep research model to help you think in a deeper format. Which allows you to frame your problems better. You become clearer in your problems. You allow them to understand your assumptions. So a lot of these early framing of the problems come with a ton of assumptions, right? We're assuming we get 1% of the market. We're assuming that $1 trillion market is accurate. So this allows you to, what I mean by draft alternatives quickly is that you can go with, okay, let's be conservative. Let's say the market is $1 billion. Let's be aggressive and say it's $1 trillion. And then let's give a bunch of options in between. So now we have 4 or 5 different options that we can then assess as the best potential thing to propose for our project, for our product, for our company. So we can kind of assess what is the best judgment advantage, what is the best judgment value that we want to go and do this today. And then we could spot the risks faster. So it's a great way to accelerate this thinking. It's not replacing your thinking. You would still need to do all of this. You need to ask the right questions. You need to frame the right problems, but you can use this to accelerate and add velocity to that research. So then how do you learn faster? This is this cycle of learning, which we all go through, whether we go to school or whether we go to a master's program or whether we go to a job and it's on-the-job training. Top performers at companies don't know more out the gate than the low performers. But what they do well is that they can learn significantly faster because they're doing this continuous practice and they're being able to improve themselves faster. So the people that are starting to use Gen AI, or let's go back to the Excel example, because I think that resonates with people well. The people that started to use Excel first, and the people that were using Excel to do the work that would allow you to do 15 company researches, as opposed to the same person that was just doing one manual company research, that person that was doing 15 just as well as the one is becoming a top performer, right? It becomes quite logical when we think about it in that framing. So that person that was doing Excel was learning Excel faster, was understanding and getting feedback from Excel and figuring out how to best use it. If they didn't know it, they were taking a quicker course to say, how do I do macros, or how do I just do financial analysis, or how do I just do better optimizing of tables? And slowly, But faster than the manual group, they were onboarding and becoming this Excel expert. That's the same learning cycle that we're doing with generative AI. Maybe I'm using generative AI to help me with a resume. Maybe I'm using it to help me just prospect and reach out to different employers that might want to hire me. Maybe it's helping me do interview prep and doing research on that company. But if you're the one adopting those learnings, and then, okay, now I've learned how to research a company. Now I want to use how would I make it better for my resume. Now you have two skills with generative AI under your belt, and you keep doing those micro learnings. You can see how this compounds to this becoming your competitive edge of now you're an expert in this field. So the purpose is not to feel intimidated by it, but to embrace this amazing technology that you can add, again, velocity, or my theme is, right, reduce that gap between you and your maximum self. And then lastly, we talk about this visibility piece, the show your work. So careers stall, get stagnant, sometimes because people get comfortable, right? But for the people that are trying to move up that career ladder or want to do that next thing, the difference is not of the work that they're doing. The difference is how are they communicating and selling that work to their executives. So what I mean by that, right? I'm going to keep on this Excel example because people resonate with this Excel example. Let's say that you now have two people that have adopted Excel, and they're both producing the same outputs every day. One of them is posting on LinkedIn and sharing learnings and best practices of, hey, I figured out how to make Excel do 15x more productivity for me, and here's how I'm applying it to my organization. And then that same person is going and sharing with the organization and doing trainings on how did they use Excel to maximize their role. And then that same person that's now the Excel expert or thought leader at the organization is providing best practices and also creating templates so the rest of the team can now use Excel better and better, versus the person that is using Excel but just for themselves, and they're able to work 15 times faster because they're using Excel. When you think about it in part user A and user B, the clear answer for who's going to move up the ladder is going to be user A, right? They're showing their impact, they're demonstrating the value, they're expanding the value to their team, they're becoming a force multiplier for their organization, which is who people want to hire, who people want to promote, who people feel are the experts in this group. So what does AI do for you, right? It allows you to turn these things that we're doing into artifacts faster. So rather than creating a best practices document from scratch, rather than creating a template from scratch, rather than trying to take what's so in your head of how well you're using Excel and then putting it into demos or checklists or whatever it is, you can use AI to help you do that way faster. So now you can have a weekly report on Ben's best practices for Excel. You can have a better visibility demo section that gets updated every day in slideware for your executives to see. You can turn out these artifacts much more professionally and much faster, and then ask for feedback again on this, because that's going to be what differentiates you as a user that's adopting technology to the user that's embracing and becoming a thought leader in technology. So let's make this personal, right? This is my journey at a high level of how I went from what I would call this sales rep, which I was selling, I was the business person, to now what still I struggle to say, but I feel better in, is the Gen AI expert, right? I use Gen AI every day. I implemented Gen AI for complex use cases. I educate customers and large enterprises as well as startups on the best ways to use generative AI operationally, process-wise, as well as technology decision-wise. So how did I get to making this journey, and how would I use Gen AI to help me do this even faster? So you can see my journey. It was a sales rep. I did Azure certifications. I went to my master's program. I did the Gen AI leader at Google, and then I became a Microsoft strategic leader. What were the steps I took, and what could you do in order to achieve this in your own world? First was self-directed learning. So I took the initiative that I wanted to not be in direct sales. I wanted to get more technical. So I went and did my self-directed learning the same way that you all are spending the time with me today to self-direct and get learnings from other people to build your technical skill set. So I went and learned Azure and AI certifications and started to build this technical foundation. I then used networking. So my professor at Columbia ended up becoming the business developer Gen AI leader at Google. And the reason why this was important is that I was persistently networking with him to make sure that we had a relationship. So it became a very logical step when Gen AI became a thing that he could say, hey, can you help me out on this hands-on Gen AI project? Which then opened up we need to hire more people. You're the logical person we want to hire because you already know how to use Gen AI. You already know how to sell this stuff. And you've been hands-on working with me. So I know it was the easiest interview because they already know everything about me. And then lastly, how do you translate this experience into Microsoft is now that I've shown initiative with learning, that I know how to network, I've been hands-on with Gen AI, I've been able to sell, I can now bring that into a strategic technical leadership role that basically connects all these dots for us. And so how does Gen AI help you with this? Gen AI helps you with self-directed learning. You take that initiative, you go and learn that technology. There's learning agents out there. There's custom micro learnings we talked about. From a networking perspective, it is from following up, from helping you with creating a right email or LinkedIn reach out, from reminding you on sending you and doing research. Maybe you wanted to send a research article that was really thought-provoking to the person you wanted to network with, to you being able to test out and actually use the technology, which basically you have these co-pilots next to you that allow you to be your ultimate assistant to go and leverage and do these tools, to ultimately getting to your, I would say my current goal, which is how do you then translate all of these learnings and show your value, create visibility, provide the deeper learning, and frame your problems correctly into your next stage of your career. So as you think about this and everything we're talking about in this personal viewpoint, you can again leverage this at your company. You can leverage this at your startup. You can leverage this if you're trying to get into the workforce. So all of these concepts we're talking about are very transferable across wherever you are in your journey of using generative AI. So think of AI as your X partner, right? Fill in the blank, insert X here. As your research partner, as your thinking partner, as your follow-up partner. There's more partners this can be, right? So this almost extends infinitely on what the partner is. But the key is your mindset shift on the next time you have a question or you need to research something, how would you go about creating a research partner that will help you do that? Next time you draft ideas, how would you think out loud with AI to help you draft that idea, but also refine that idea and then iterate on that idea so it becomes more thoughtful out the gate in 20 minutes rather than thinking on it for a day? How would you integrate your partner into your customer relationship management follow-ups? How would you help with your nudges or ensuring consistent professional messaging? This is now your follow-up partner, right? This is how you can be consistent, add velocity, add acceleration to your overall personal and professional journey. So I've talked about how great AI is. And I'm seeing the emojis populate here on, wow, this is great. And you probably have heard this ad nauseum on how amazing and all the amazing tools and how the tools are innovating so fast and amazing, 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 right? But where does AI falter? What does it miss out on? What is that human thing that it's not a magic button? It's not the silver bullet. It's not the fill in the metaphor here, right? You have to do a human aspect of this. So if we think about me personally, right? What did AI not give me? It didn't give me ambition to go and want to go and learn Azure and AI certifications. It didn't give me taste to figure out who is Ben as a professional. How do I want to communicate? What is the tone that I want to explore and share with the world on LinkedIn, internally, with my friends? And it didn't give me the courage to go and take the leap to leave my company that I loved at SaaS to then the company that I loved at Google to then switching out of sales. It doesn't give you this ambition, taste, and courage. This is human, innately driven. So you can always choose to be that person that is successful, being the human calculator, manually doing the 10K reviews every time manually for every single new 10K and investor presentation. Or you can choose to be the person that adopted Excel and just use it for yourself to make you better. Or you can choose to be the Excel thought leader that goes and shares your findings with the world and makes your company better and more profitable because you're sharing your learnings with the world and getting feedback from them. The direction and the decision is up to you. The AI won't make this decision for you. It will enable you and accelerate you to take and help you in that direction. But ultimately, it is the human, it is you that will drive what is that next step. So again, we talk about this career flywheel. It's actually the same thing as that micro learning cycle, right? It reduces the cycle to compound your growth. So if you take every minor learning course and put that into this framework that combines everything, right? We talked about framing your questions, doing deeper learning, and then sharing it. If you went as a person young and early in your career and you wanted to apply this, how would you do this? You would combine this all. So you would create a loop that helps you learn a new skill, apply that knowledge to a real problem, share that work publicly, collect feedback from your peers and see how they think that you're doing. You then want, and then repeat it again. And then you keep doing this cycle over and over again. You'll slowly learn that you'll learn a boatload of new skills. You'll be able to apply it to a bunch of new industries. I would say your political, your brand awareness publicly will probably 10x, if not 100x, because of this micro learning and sharing. And you'll quickly see the fruits of your labor, the rewards of this work because of how quick you're iterating on this and the compoundingness of you being able to do this faster. So I can't leave without a call to action, right? This is the salesperson in me of don't leave a presentation without asking for something. So what's the ask here? And the ask is actually, I can't check this with you all, but I will offer, if you wanted to do this and message me or post me on LinkedIn, connect with me and share, I'm doing this and tag me every time. I'd love to see the impact that you're taking with this learning. But the ask is don't ask what AI should learn, or don't ask the AI tool, what should I learn? Ask yourself, where does the friction in my current process slow my own growth? Is that the research? Is that the networking? Is that the learning? What part of my flow does it slow in? This could be professionally too, right? Does creating requests for proposals, does sending out invites, does researching calendars, does following up with customers? What is the highest friction that is slowing your growth to take that next level? And then the next 90 days, map those friction points to the delays and the repetitive tasks. Design an AI, your research assistant, right? Your X assistant to help you with that task. And then finally ship out a weekly artifact that shares what is it that you're doing that demonstrates the growth and the value that you've taken to help do this. So you're mapping the slowness, you're designing AI to help you mitigate that slowness, and then you're sharing what that is with the results. And measure that progress, right? How quickly is it taking you to do this artifact today that it used to take you? How many of these did you previously share with your company that now you're sharing today? How many responses were you able to, whatever it is, right? Map to the results that you're sharing. It just resonates. Think about all the customer success stories you see from all the major companies, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Apples, the OpenAIs, whoever it is, right? The use cases that you see on customer success stories, the best ones are the ones that start with 40% savings, 100 billion in savings, 20% more productive, right? These are the ones that people want to see, but they're the hardest to measure because people don't actually want to measure. It takes more time. So be the person that is measuring your progress because it will go leaps and bounds into the impact that it has. And so this is my ask, this is my call to action. I would say start Monday, but maybe start today. Feel free to tag me. I hope that this was a helpful presentation for you all, and this is transferable across all the different career paths that you're in and all the businesses that you're hopeful and part of. But with the rest of the time, I'd love to be able to answer any questions, make this very personal, to share my experiences, or even shed light into experiences that you're having so I can answer for you.
Thank you so much, Ben. We did have a lot of questions come in, so get started with the first one. So the first one I'll turn to is one we had from Facebook, from Akwasi. And so the question here is, how do you ensure AI systems are transparent and explainable in their decision-making process? I'm assuming when people use AI, they have to explain like the ultimate outcome that they provide. So how can you kind of explain when you use AI in your process?
Yeah, so first, AI is if you speak with machine learning folks that have been, I would say, in the AI industry, it's important to differentiate between generative AI and machine learning topics that we've already used, right? So I'm going to take the question as if we're trying to explain generative AI, because explaining like a machine learning model, like a regression model, or how did we predict the next outcome, like a Netflix algorithm, right? How does Netflix predict what's the next best recommended item for you, Ben, as a as a watcher? Is different than how generative AI, if you go to ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, provides you a response. So in the terms of generative AI, what's the best way to ensure what I would call trust in this is multiple ways. Because one thing you're not going to get is how was the model trained and what that data was trained on. You're not going to get that. You're also not getting that from machine learning models. Netflix and Facebook aren't sharing their algorithms for how do they figure out their news feed, right? So we've never actually had it before. We're just now becoming more knowledgeable, so we're asking the right questions. So how do you improve that confidence? The way you do that is by providing better grounding sources. So how can you ensure? So if I wanted to get an answer or feedback on my resume, I'm not going to ask Copilot, give me feedback on my resume and not give it anything. I'm going to attach my resume to the chat and say, give me feedback on my resume for this role. Use the resume that I've attached and only the resume that I've attached to help me with my answer. And so then when it provides me the response, I can ensure that it's only providing in the citations it will provide you, it's only going to be citing my resume as the source document that it's providing responses about, which gives me the confidence and trust that I can understand what are the recommendations based off of and what is it learning from. The second thing is around citations. So if you're not providing the information, which that's okay, the key is to be able to validate that information. So give me the source. I'd recommend you all check those sources. In some cases, I even bring that output to a different model in general, like a different company's model or a different version of their own model, and say, I want you to be the source checker. And that's your only job. And so now my source checker partner is going to take the output, take the source, and now going to validate and check all the sources to confirm that these are good and valid and up to date, however you want it to check it, right? And so there are ways to mitigate and gain confidence and trust in the outputs from generative AI technology. And those are two off the bat.
Thanks for that. So this question, I guess, maybe goes a little bit opposite, and we all think AI is great. But a question is, how do we ensure that maybe in some cases we aren't completely dependent on AI, and we just use it for everything? How can we best practices for just kind of keeping ourselves without using completely AI?
Yeah, so I maybe I'll reframe the question to like one of the things that I've seen, I have to look it up, so don't source me on this. We can find the source, was Critical as AI adoption or Gen AI adoption was increasing, there was an inverse reaction in critical thinking. So as people started to rely on generative AI, they then relied less on trying to kind of navigate the problem themselves and starting to critical think themselves because they, rather than thinking about it, the first reaction, the gut reaction is, let me go ask my Gen AI agent and see about it. So you have to kind of consciously think around what are the skills that you want to keep in those areas. I think the biggest skills that we have are the persona skills, right? We know what's important, what's valuable. We can, again, that ambition, that taste, those courage things that AI doesn't have. So where I do think that there's a ton of productivity gains that are going to be happening across everything we do, you also, it's helpful to be cognizant on, should I be trying to stretch my brain functionality? And maybe it's helpful for me to think about this on my own for a little bit and not go to Gen AI for this. That is completely okay and personal decision that you can take. I've had scenarios that I've just kind of noodled on an idea, did a whiteboard and kind of brainstormed it. And then I brought and took a screenshot of that whiteboard and gave it to Gen AI and said, here's what I've been brainstorming. Now help me think through the rest of this, kind of be my consulting coach on this. Which goes into my next point real quickly is we've already been, I would say, diverting critical thinking to consultants, if you will, for a very long time, right? There's management consultants, there's business consultants, there's staff aug. So this concept of saying, I don't have the time to do this thing. I need help. I want to hire an expert. I want to hire people to come in and do this for me is not a novel idea. What's unique about this is that you don't need to go, which is why consultants are going gangbusters for this technology, is because they're at a very pivotal point. And the CEO of Accenture just called this out, is that they're at a pivotal point of their careers because the ability to critically think with industry experts and people that know everything about the world used to be relying on a person, but now it's not 100% relying on a person. You could do that critical thinking and make Gen AI that person. So it's a long way to say that it's kind of up to you on how do you want to continue to train your brain and how we use technology today and how we use people today in this greater ecosystem to kind of keep us nimble and at that sphere.
That's great. Definitely a good balance seems really important. So this one is a little bit specific. This is from our email questions from Zimbabwe, one of our network members. They are asking about social media and their business. So can you maybe provide any examples about AI tools that can help with social media and promoting business or anything along those lines?
I mean, I think all the social media companies have their own AI tools that help you do this. I know Meta has a very complex and like paid for algorithm to help you with advertising. LinkedIn, I see them have like boosting features. Um, so I would say it depends on what it is that you want to do. You could use the tools within that social media platform. You can kind of create your own tools that help you come up with the content and brainstorm it. I know people kind of use, like for YouTube generation, some people generate their own music now or their own thumbnails or their own summaries of things to go from larger form videos to smaller form videos. So um, the answer in this case is there's almost too many options to choose from. So I would say go with one, like put your blinders on, see how it goes, and kind of test that, and then move on to the next one. And then that's that slow micro iteration learning, right? You'll figure out that you don't like Meta's version, you like LinkedIn's version. You don't like LinkedIn's version, you like Instagram's version. And you'll kind of go through that learning cycle. And by the end of it, you'll say you've tried out 15 versions and here's the best one. And then you should share that with everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect answer. So many options available. So this next question is from Angola, and it's specific to like African governments and how they're dealing with AI. So it says sometimes African governments have limited AI budgets and often only regulate rather than build capacity. Can you give any advice on like the focus of first not to be left behind? So regulation versus building capacity and maintaining maybe what they have?
Yeah, so regardless of government, right? This is actually just like a standard. How do you prioritize what to spend budget on, basically, right? Government is usually stricter in rightful ways because they're using, in some cases, taxpayer money to be able to do what their budgeting is. How I would frame this is, what is the measurable impact that you're trying to pitch, right? So don't just use AI for AI. What is the current budget allocated towards? And then if we can find a use case, like for example, let's say, I don't know, we found a use case that provided that you do every day. And if we can save 50% of time on doing that task, and that only costs 25% of that budget, could we use 25% of a different budget to help us save 50% of time on a task? Right? It becomes, we don't want to we kind of use emotions in this, but this isn't an emotional game when it comes to budgets. People look at numbers and figures. So this goes back to the measure your progress and measure the success. We're getting a lot of great use cases and case studies around productivity metrics, around creative metrics, around Gen AI impact metrics. So I would say to go review that budget, review the things that you do today, and see what do you do today that you can potentially use some of that budget to repurpose for higher value or potentially productivity gains or money savings, right? It's usually a money in, money out type of thing. So what can you use to make more money, or what can you use to save more money, or what can you use to make people more effective is basically the game. So I would frame it in an ROI proposal to your government or to your stakeholders to then prioritize it. And if they don't see the priority or the benefit of it, that's a different conversation. And maybe they need to see like other governments do it first. So some people don't want to be the first movers of it. And that's more of an emotional decision rather than a numbers game.
Got it. All right, so this question goes a little bit back to the technical aspect. And so they're asking, this question is from Zoom. So just the possibility of detecting results generated by AI to avoid plagiarism, how best can, or some techniques that you think would be good in doing that?
Yeah, plagiarism is a very sticky topic. We were seeing a bunch of lawsuits on this because the question actually is, what are you defining as generative AI plagiarism? Because you'll have some people in a camp saying that today humans learn by getting inspired by other information, right? So I read 15 articles, and based on those 15 articles, I synthesize those articles, I create my own logic, and then I provide my Ben response based on that learning. Then that's what generative AI mostly does, right? They have just a lot more articles and they can synthesize it way better than I can. And then they provide results, and then they could even share the sources of where they got that information from to give that summary of learning. So I wouldn't, so I would be cautious on what you're considering plagiarism versus what we're calling just standard way of learning of what humans do versus what Gen AI does. There's different camps of that. There are tools out there that are helping across like copyright or acknowledging that this was generated by Gen AI. You'll see a lot of these things like watermarks or like the standard kind of imagery that you'll see, your icon is kind of this like diamond shape that has like curved diamonds in a lot of cases. I think Zoom actually has like a Gen AI, like two curved diamonds to show Gen AI is happening. So a lot of companies are starting to acknowledge when things are being generated with AI to call it out, whether it's image or watermarked or whatever it is. So that is one way, but you're always going to have these bad actors that are going to say, that's my work. It happened before Gen AI with plagiarism. It's going to happen after Gen AI. The key on this is just to reference citations. That will be the best way to help mitigate it, because if they're just citing one source for the entire document, and it's almost a verbatim summary, unless you're specifically prompting and saying, give me a summary of this one document, then it's not plagiarizing. You're asking to summarize it. But if you're saying summarize economics and it only summarizes one document on economics, then that's a different conversation. So I would think about what you mean by plagiarism, which hopefully I answered part of that question.
I think it did. And I guess this maybe next question also goes with a little bit of maybe issues with thinking AI and plagiarism exist. And so this question is from our network member through email. And they're asking, how can small enterprises integrate AI ethically and responsibility when building trust with new customers that might not be familiar with AI? So possibly their new customer might not know AI or just think it's just plagiarism. How can you over time just build trust if you're using it and you want your partner to be comfortable with it?
Yeah, so I would lean on these big companies, these big hyperscalers, these Microsofts, these Googles, these Amazons that are providing all of these legal terms and conditions along with their models, right? So you as a small startup, you're not building your own generative AI model. You're leveraging other models that have been built for you. If you're building, maybe I'll segment it. If you are building your own custom language model from your own tokens and your own parameters, then that is a different story, and that's a more of a unique niche case I'll call out. If you're a small company that is trying to leverage these tools available, and you want to showcase to your companies that you're selling to how you're doing this responsibly, I would showcase all the things that you're doing with the hyperscalers provide you these tools to do. Some of those tools are feedback. You have evaluation tools. You have copyright indemnity tools or like terms and conditions. You have data provisioning provisions that call out specifically, we're not training your data on our model type of things. So you have your own separate tenant. So I would get to know all the certifications that people use to build trust and prove security that these hyperscalers are forced to do across every company. So then you as a startup can say, we're using the same infrastructure that big bank is using. We're using the same infrastructure that big government is using. And so we're taking advantage of all of the same security and evaluation and responsibility tools that they have available to make sure that you're getting this trustworthy and the best of breed stuff with our small business value. So I would say don't start from scratch. Leverage what these big companies are investing millions and millions of dollars in to make this trustworthy and make it as credible as possible.
It's really good. Looking at a few more questions. Um, so these are a little bit specific, but are there any AI tools you can recommend for just customer service? Um, Question isn't super specific, but just how can you use AI to improve customer service for your
Yeah,
business?
there's a bunch of tools for customer service. Customer service is one of those, I would call it like go-to use cases because
Mhm.
you get a bunch of inquiries, you get a bunch of kind of usually standard responses, and there's typical ways of measuring like how many queries can you answer per day, how long does it take you to answer each query. And so the value is quite measurable because you can say, you one person, rather than answering 15 easy queries, I want you to answer one very complex query while we have the agent answer the other 15 that are really easy and it's found on our website. So the way that you can use these tools is a lot of ways. You can use it on grounding with internal resources. You could use as potential responses to help your live agent respond to customers. You can use it as like a proactive agent to respond directly with customers. You can use it as a follow-up agent to follow up with the customer after the call to summarize it. So I would honestly ask this question to generative AI and say, what are all the use cases that Gen AI can be used for customer service? Because it's pretty pervasive. There's really well documented customers using this today. And there's a bunch of tools out there. Microsoft, Google, um, have tools that use this. I'm sure there's also point solutions that just say like Customer Solution AI. I'm sure that is a company that does this today. So there's almost too much available for to help, but I would frame it in that way. There's a lot of value for customer success.
Got it. So this is a question about learning more about AI. So are there any courses online that you would recommend that might be like a good starting point?
Yeah, so starting point, I would say there's ones that I've recently done actually for it's basically beginner level is Am I don't Amazon I think has one. Google I know has one because I did it with Google, and so does Microsoft have them. The Google one was like a digital Gen AI leader certification, which provided free training available on um, like what is responsible AI, what are use cases, kind of intro level certification. And Microsoft had a similar one, which I just passed. It was called like the AI Transformation Leader certification. Very similar concept um, with Microsoft spin on it versus Google spin on it. You can actually see them both on my LinkedIn page under my certifications on my profile. So I would say that those are good starting points, but it's not the end all be all. Like YouTube is a great starting point. There's a bunch of hands-on starting ones as well. Um, if you're just saying like choose one, you got to choose one. I would be biased and say choose the Microsoft AI Transformation Leader and study for that one because it's free training. There's free documents on it. You got to pay for the certification, but the training there is all available for you.
Awesome. Well, the questions are keep coming in, but I want to offer an opportunity for a closing for you. So if you have any words of wisdom to offer our audience before we close it out, I'll allow you to do so.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for this amazing session. I'm very thankful that there's a lot of questions coming in. So my closing is kind of my call to action, right? Is if you're serious, which I believe everyone that's listening or watching this is serious about this because you care about learning and growing yourself, take me up on the action that I've posed. Tag me on LinkedIn, share the artifacts that you're shipping, share your stories on how you're starting to leverage this and decrease that learning cycle to increase the velocity to make yourself better. If you have questions, you can always reach out. My name's Ben Heller on LinkedIn. So I'll close with this is that AI isn't replacing you. It is replacing the folks that are not using it to maximize that gap. So what it's replacing is how much you can maximize your full potential. So don't be afraid by what AI has to offer. Embrace it, go one use case at a time, and slowly take micro learnings to become better as it adds velocity and acceleration to your own career. And thank you, I would say, to the YALI Network, to the embassy, to the U.S. Department of State. Thank you for conducting this session. I think it's been really fun to have this amazing audience and for helping moderate all these questions. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ben. We really appreciate it and sharing your information where there could be follow-up. So we thank you once again and appreciate your time. So thank you all for joining us in this last of this three-part series. We've explored so much how to identify and maintain partnerships with the U.S. and African entrepreneurs together, partnerships that really build on resilience, innovation, and opportunities that we can share. So we really appreciate your participation throughout all the sessions. Your questions and your perspectives were really vital in making sure that this was a success. So we hope that you're leaving with some practical strategies that you can apply immediately. And even all of our speakers have offered ways to reach out to them where you can follow up more. So if you're not a YALI Network member, we would like you to join this community. You can sign up to be a network member at yali.state.gov, where you can find out more opportunities and meet other entrepreneurs across the U.S. as well as Africa. So we wish you great success as you build your partnerships, and we look forward to what's to come. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.